Thank you for tuning in. Today we have with us a leading industry expert, Mr. Abhishek Tripathi, Director Information Security at S&P Global. He is an experienced leader in cybersecurity and process optimization and has been in the industry for over 2 decades in lead roles across prominent companies. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thanks for inviting me, Supriya, and it is really good to be speaking with you today.
Likewise, sir. Sir, I was hoping to gain some insights from you on the recent Microsoft CrowdStrike outage that crippled organizations across the world, right? It was unprecedented and it left no industry untouched. And no one had imagined that a simple update in the operating system could lead to this kind of chaos on such a magnanimous scale. Both Microsoft and CrowdStrike released the details into the technical flaw that led to this incident and has also apologized for the inconvenience everyone suffered. But sir, I'd like to understand, what is your analysis and take on this outage?
First of all, before we start, I work with an organization here, and whatever I speak is not on behalf of that organization. So I wanted to put that disclaimer out. Whatever I speak with my own experience and then my own knowledge that I have gained all this while. Talking about this particular incident, if you will just look at any sort of incidents those are happening lately, right, the impacts will be huge most of the time, because when it is about a bigger vendor, SolarWinds happened. Even Department of Defense in US was impacted. They had to pay for it. You talk about Log4j, it was much smaller. Everyone was impacted with it. So the way everything is being digitalized, the incidents, when they happen, their blast radius could be really high in many cases. And when it comes to the bigger vendors, the industry leaders, it will again be bigger and bigger. CrowdStrike is a leading EDR provider across the world. Perhaps the number one, right? And all the organizations who are using their services, they trust on them. This is how it works. You trust them when they are partners. So, and that trust actually ended up breaking the backbone of so many organizations and industries. Around $5.4 billion of losses that I read was published by Parametrics, some insurance organization apparently, which is huge if you see. And it is not only the impact, the capital impact of it, the soft impact of it would be really high. The repo that the CrowdStrike lost was huge. The repo that Microsoft lost was huge, right? And other than that, there could be, this will start a series of phishing campaigns. It will be just a start of getting new social engineering techniques in, and and impact the whole world in a longer way. So there's a huge influx of stuff coming in due to this. Now, this also put the importance of what a classical patching methodology or risk management methodology talked about. You have a vendor, really good. You're treating them as a partner, very good. But vendor cannot become bigger than the business. And that's what has happened here somehow, ironically. So when we were just going through our initial formative phases of IT, we were told that every patch that goes into production that gets tested. Now, you change the name of it. In this case, said that a channel file that was updated, which actually looks at the behavioral aspects of any malware, that got updated and that impacted, right? So, at the end of the day, all these updates are being rolled out. There has to be a release management. There has to be better testing of each of these updates, and then it should go into your production. People always put their production n-1. If your patch is at n number, they kept it at n-1 for a week to see the impact on the lower system, right? That didn't happen. Perhaps all the organizations are going out and asking for it now. So yeah, that was another thing, another aspect of it. And then Microsoft came up with a very good bite later on, how European Union actually arm twisted them to open their kernel to third party antiviruses providers. Now that exposed them to this. Unless CrowdStrike had access to their kernels, this might not have happened, right? So these there had been these aspects to it, which has actually gone ahead and caused this. Um, a lot of this was controllable. A lot might not be controllable because the incidents will keep on happening. As I said initially, the blast radius will be higher. The bigger the vendor, the bigger the blast radius. But yeah, these will keep on happening. It's just that we can, from our risk management processes, we can look to reduce the impact. That's the best that one can do.
Those were some fabulous insights into the outage, and you've given us a lot of food for thought. Thank you so much once again. So, like you mentioned, we all saw the short-term impacts, right? I mean, there was a blue screen of death, and no one could work, and all kinds of digitization and automation efforts completely failed. We even saw people carrying manual boarding passes. They were written by hand. We saw all of that. These were the short-term impacts, and of course, you mentioned the reputational damage and the $5.4 billion loss, right? So, what are some of the long term impacts? What are some of the expected long term impacts of this outage?
If we have to look at the long-term impact, of course, one thing is the lack of trust in the vendors that will be there, of course, over long time actually, where the third-party risk management processes will be strengthened further, and they will ask more questions. They should ask more questions, but this will give them a food for thought that where if TPRM was just a checklist exercise by a team which is more of a theorist, they will have to go technical. They will have to ask what kind of access do you need on my infrastructure and systems, right? Whether you need kernel access or not. How are you? How is your uh, supply chain pipeline working? Your own supply chain, I mean, third-party supply chain pipeline, and how is their release process working? There will be a lot of questions that will be coming back to the vendors. It will be tough to be a vendor for some time now. That's one thing. Another thing that I think from the organizational perspective would be the way COVID came and people got to understand that BCP is not just a theoretical thing. It can be highly impacting. I remember reading somewhere, I think in Harvard Business Journal, right? There were two companies. They actually took the case of two companies which were both in the business of working on some digital things. I think automobile companies, yeah, and they both needed sensors, right? The the way their business continuity planning and disaster recovery planning actually differed, that's how their production got impacted. Because after COVID, there was you would remember, even in India, finding a car was a tough task because the sensors were very less in the market. No one was getting full deliveries, so the cars were coming late because those sensors are needed. Mahindra went ahead and they reduced the number of sensors in the car, so you lose a lot of features. All those things were happening. I don't remember the exact name of the companies, but one of the companies had that backup plan, and they pulled that in, and they were able to manage, if not flush the sensors and the chips, they were still able to survive. The another one didn't. They couldn't. So yeah, that's the way it is going to work. The business continuity planning will become better. I mean, the leading airlines which were working on Windows systems perhaps will look at having their business continuity in a Linux system, or using more Macs or whatever. And yeah, so that from the business continuity and disaster recovery planning, maybe they will go back, and the way it happened in India, that they started issuing written boarding passes. Maybe they can go for that too. This will also, I believe, will make much more focus on legal and compliance pieces as well. I mean, the governments in all the countries which are looking after their critical infrastructure I mean, airline is one of the critical infrastructures in any country, right? So they will become much more tough when they come up with regulations, and they will ask more questions. They will ask you for more compliances. Uh, and the last thing that I could think of is perhaps cyber insurance. I mean, $5.4 billion we are talking about. Cyber insurance will be tougher. They will ask more questions. They will look for more better assessment of your infrastructure, and then going to get it. Perhaps there will be higher premiums if you are not as good in PCPs.
Like you rightly mentioned, sir, this incident has brought the spotlight on business continuity, right? And organizations are being forced to look into their IT framework and ensure that nothing is wrong. So, what are some of the lessons that can be drawn from this incident regarding the integration of cybersecurity solutions with core operating systems? And are there any specific vulnerabilities or risk factors that organizations should be aware of?
And I had touched these topics a bit earlier. I mean, when I talked about the third-party risk management process, looking harshly at what kind of permissions do you need on my infrastructure, whether you really need uh, the kernel access or permissions, or perhaps Windows and other operating system providers will have to provide additional means for the third-party vendor for it to be fair. Because that was the reason that you came back to Windows and asked them to open their kernels for these antivirus service providers, right? So they may come up with a mechanism where they can give them enough information that they can run this. Otherwise, I don't see if they can do much around this part. Of course, the third-party risk management will have more greater say and greater bigger queries around this eventually when the vendors come. Secondly, they will have to be better at their change management. All the organizations, they will have to see that all these changes are going through your cabs, and you are ensuring that even if it's going to standard cab, you need to have better risk management, risk assessment in there, that what kind of impact is there. Whether a CrowdStrike is doing its testing better or not, but you will have to do your testing. You'll have to go to your lower environment. You'll have to push those patches and these channel files, and you'll have to see what is breaking and what is not. And you need to have a better problem management as well, to ensure that if something is breaking, you get the core of it, that why it is breaking. So technically, these will be the things that has to be done. That will be the way to tackle it in future. Of course, better DR and VCP planning would be the last thing. I mean, that is always the part of if you go through the NIST cybersecurity framework, where it talks about identifying, protecting, detecting, and responding and recovering. So recovery always comes at the end. So your recovery process needs to be stronger, and it needs to be able to pull up the infrastructure in such kind of scenarios too. So perhaps backup on a Linux when you are running a Windows, and backup on a window if you are running a Linux.
I mean, I wanted to ask you actually what are some of the best practices that you'd recommend, but we've touched up on all of the factors already, right? However, I'd like to ask you, is there something that you'd like to add that I may have missed out on asking?
I think it was pretty thorough, and if we talk about this particular incident, I don't think you could have asked much more, because everything just goes around the same regulation, better hygiene around your change management and release management, and BCPs and DRs and compliance. So I think you have touched everything. So I think we are pretty good around that.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I got a really, really unique view on this outage from what I've been reading so far. And I really appreciate you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you so much.
Have a nice one.